seem to be, I won't say limited, but there seem to be quite large gaps in that.
I beg your pardon. In what regard?
Well, you've been talking about the foundation type, the type of building, the interaction between the rail and the buildings. You seem to be focused, dare I say it, exclusively, almost exclusively on the enabling works. But I would have thought that your involvement would have extended much more into the engineering side of the development, rather than just clearing of services and site preparation.
Right. I mean, you're absolutely right, and my role does, which is what I've tried to illustrate here in terms of my abilities. However, the reason I chose to focus on the enabling works is because I felt that I wanted to demonstrate to you a different kind of type of work that I've been involved in, which is possibly not entirely illustrated in my report. So I wanted to, by all means, I could have spoken to you about something more engineering related that I've done in TfL.
Fair enough. But how far is this development along at the moment?
It is basically in a stage where, because of the COVID situation, enough people from the planning team have been furloughed for us not to be able to submit the planning application. But it's basically only from being submitted when things go back to normal.
So have the site clearance works been carried out yet?
No. So, sorry, I probably didn't early enough. So over here, because of the COVID-19 situation, I asked TfL not to sign the contract, so the works haven't proceeded.
So what's there now?
Well, in certain parts of the site, there are small tenanted properties, single-story properties, which TfL are not looking to remove for the time being, but there are other parts of the site which have substantial amount of trees, small compounds which have been disused. There's a parking.
What are the main risks you've identified at this stage, or when you start with site clearance? In particular, what safety risks or health?
Well, I'd say that by being next to the railway, there's a risk of contaminants. That could be metals or possibly oils which have come off trains, so there would be a requirement to abide under COSH. There are records that show there have been previous buildings on site which have been demolished, so it is reasonable to expect that there is asbestos in the ground, possibly lead. So I'd say that those are the initial risks to the work.
And what's your role in predicting and managing those risks?
So I'm under CDM. I've got a client-side role. So my responsibility is to review the likely occurrences of health and safety which I have influence over. So it is my responsibility to review them and identify them and discuss them with the contractor through a risk assessment.
Okay. Can you describe that process?
Yeah, of course. So essentially, it falls under the principles of prevention of the CDM. So initially, it's a review of the risks and avoiding those risks which can be avoided. Where they cannot be avoided, there's an evaluation of the risks that have to occur, a control of those risks at their source, adapting the work, the people who are carrying out the activities, adapting the work where there are technological advancements that you find out about, replacing the dangerous with the non-dangerous, less dangerous. Then there is, of course, the having a holistic approach to health and safety on site, using health and safety measures which address the whole of the site operatives as opposed to individuals where it is possible to do so. Things like that. Sorry, go on.
Which hazard are you most worried about identified, and why?
To health and safety. I'd say. Well, I mean, it's also worth me mentioning that whilst there are the contamination risks to health and safety, there's also lifting operations as well as the lifting operations and lifting equipment regulations that you need to abide by, as well as the provision of use and work equipment regulations. So I'd say
is that later in your project?
Well,
divide risks by.
It would, but sorry, I presumed your question was around the enabling works. Right. Well, wherever you're using work equipment, you could come across an injury. And in terms of lifting operations, I mean, any weight can be deemed to be a lifting. It could cause a lifting operation, because it's not about the weight; it's also about the awkward shape an object might have. So I think, whilst these works might affect the operation of the railway, I think that from people's perspective, I'd be most concerned about any injuries which might be occurring as a consequence of work equipment as well as contamination.
That's to workforce, you're worried about it?
As well as the general public, but I think appropriate control measures have to be in place for that, and that goes back.
Could we move on onto the report fairly soon, Dermot, please?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to just finish off any points on the on Sergios's presentation?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, going back to your point about health and safety, and it not just being about the site operatives, it's also core about the general public, and that's where the method and the competence of the contractors is set. Over here, I don't know if you picked it out whilst I was presenting, but the proposed methodology and the way which I looked to score it also included health and safety, because you can't detach these two.
Okay.
So,
Okay. I'd just like to move on to your report on your work at on the Riyadh Metro and the facade. You mentioned several times about. Sorry, are you coming off your presentation?
Oh yeah, sorry. Would you like me to share my presentation?
No. That's all right. Could you turn your camera on? Your camera on review.
Yeah, of course.
Very good. Okay. You mentioned several times about in assessing the wind load, you carried out an upper bound analysis and a lower bound analysis for the to reduce the wind forces. Could you explain a little bit what you understand by upper bound and lower bound solutions?
Yeah, of course. So the lower bound solution effectively involves demonstrating that a structure is fit for purpose within set material and geometric constraints, and in load case, and that the structure behave in an elastic manner and effectively won't collapse. However, an upper bound analysis effectively involves demonstrating that prominent failure mechanisms will not occur given a certain load case within predefined geometric and material constraints.
What do you think is what is the essential difference between the two? As an engineering philosophy.
Well, the lower bound method uses an elastic